Good morning and welcome to my Monday morning thoughts on Monday the 5th of October. Now the subject I want to speak to you about this morning is the workload and working from home. I'm really conscious that I've spoken to lots of individuals over the last week or so who have found themselves potentially working later in the evenings, doing more work and longer hours than they potentially would have done if they'd been working in the office. And I've been sort of having discussions with people trying to work out what this is, and I've got my own views and assumptions on this, but I've also sort of questioned how this has come about. And I think on the first point is that I think a lot of businesses who are still operating, I know a lot of industry sectors are still in a really difficult and hard place. But there are a number of organisations out there that are still operating, everything's happening, some are busier than they have been prior to COVID, and others are now potentially to get back to a more regular way of working after the lockdown and the paralysis that happened sort of in spring and in the summer. And as a result of this, a number of work streams are coming back online. Perhaps a lot of things that have been pushed back are now happening. So there is potentially, an up in the amount of work that's coming through. But people are still potentially working longer hours and into the evening than they may have done working in the office. And I think we have to be really careful sort of working from home, that we don't fall into what I call some of the shoulds and assumptions. I think because of COVID and the fact that there's not a lot else we perhaps are doing outside of our homes, there is far more to do, but some of us aren't. There is potentially an assumption because I'm here, I'm available, and therefore I should, be on call potentially. And at my phone and on my PC, and if someone gets in contact with me, I'm here. But in a normal working day in an office environment, you'd potentially be in meetings, you'd go out for lunch, you would perhaps chat to people in the corridor, you'd have your bathroom breaks and perhaps chat to somebody then. You might be walking past somebody's office and they say, "Oh, have you got 5 minutes?" And you'd have a lot of those informal chats. That doesn't always happen when we're at home. So, don't feel you've got to be tied to your phone or your sort of PC throughout the day. You are allowed to come back and find an email that hasn't been responded to, or get back to a phone call because you were doing something. That really shouldn't be a problem within your organisation. The other point is the creeping of work into the evenings. And I think sometimes there is assumptions and expectations swirling around that we don't really name or we don't really look into. You're looking to sign off at 5:30, 6 o'clock. You normally stop if you're in the office that time, and you send that one email with some stuff to somebody, and you might not expect them to look at it until tomorrow morning. But because you haven't shut your laptop down potentially, or put your phone down, rushed out of the office, got on a train, been on the underground, done a bit of shopping on the way home, whatever you would do normally on your journey home from work, you see the response come back. And you potentially think, well, I better do that. And you can get caught into that sort of email exchange that you think you've got to respond. The other person thinks they've got to respond back, or somebody else in the email chain thinks, oh, I better respond back. And you can then find yourself in this sort of things keep happening, you keep having to do actions because you've been involved at the beginning. But a lot of these people might be thinking the same as you, and thinking, oh God, I wish I could do that in the morning, but so-and-so's emailed me. So I think we can unwittingly sometimes get caught up in extra work. And there are some tips, potentially things you can do. I think in some occasions, and I've worked with people to do this, is one, push back. If you're can't can't respond that evening, if someone's expecting you to, and actually say, I've got plans for this evening, I've got other commitments, I'll come back to you in the morning. Depending on how urgent that is, that can be really hard to do, but it does work. And you'll be surprised the amount of people that go, okay, fair enough, you know, I completely understand. I look forward to hearing from you tomorrow morning. And that works. And the other thing to do is potentially do draft the response, because you want to, perhaps if you've got it fresh in your mind, something's happening, but don't send it to the following morning. Unless you're working in perhaps the US, you've got US people waiting on it. Not a lot is going to happen to that until tomorrow morning anyway. So if you draft your response and leave it in your inbox and send it the following morning, you then potentially prevent this tit for tat of emails, and perhaps the assumption that if so-and-so is online, I should be online, and that whole comparison thing. And you might be able over time to de-escalate that. And people then not expect you to respond to emails at that time of night. Because the more you do it, the more people are going to email you or expect you to respond at 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening. The more you do it, the more expectation you set. But if you gradually, you don't want to do it all at once, want to get to a point where there's only certain emails you will potentially urgently need to answer in the evening, then start scaling back your responses and do them the following morning and see what happens. Because you sometimes have got more control in these situations than you think you have. And sometimes the hardest thing to do is stop and respond the following morning, because we just can get caught up in this assumption of having to respond there and then. But you can set expectations of when and when you won't be around, or potentially set your own, I don't know, traffic light system of emails you will do of an evening, and those that can wait till tomorrow morning or can be pushed back for another time. But I would imagine that in most teams and most organisations, there is not really going to be that expectation that you're there till late in the evening. So I do appreciate this is happening to a lot of people. I hope some of my hints and tips today has helped you just reclaim some of that time back in an evening that you feel you're starting to lose and are, you know, having trouble getting to grips with it. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I look forward to speaking to you next Monday.